Hi, everybody. Welcome to our teen version of Young Ascended Masters. I am so excited about tonight. Normally, we don't have guest speakers or guests with us. And actually, Grant doesn't feel like a guest. He feels more like one of the group because he used to be. And I'll say a little bit more about Grant later, but yeah, if you're listening to this recording, I'm so excited that you're able to do so. It's going to be really an awesome night of sharing, and hopefully what you'll be hearing will be helpful. Okay. One of the things I want to share is a lesson I learned today. And I shared this earlier with Grant, and I want to just like make this known. So the reason I'm even sharing, Young Ascended Masters itself is like its own consciousness. And what I mean by that is, and as you guys create your own stuff, whether it's dance or music or a clientele, Grant, we create something and it becomes its own living, evolving consciousness. And that's what Young Ascended Masters is for me. And what that means for me is that it has its own mission, as well as I have a mission of working with young people and starseeds and families. Its mission is the same as it overlaps with mine, but in the process, it's teaching me. What happens on this call affects my personal life, affects my professional and spiritual life, because it is an interactive thing. So in that light, I learned something huge today, and I want to share it. And it may be something that you plant the seed for yourself one day that may be helpful. And it had to do with who's signing up tonight. So in the past, we have an intimate group tonight, as you're listening on a recording. And my first thought was, oh my gosh, nobody's showing up, and Grant's coming and he's giving his time, and I don't want to waste his time. And the kids coming in, they're going to feel so weird being, having so few of them. And so my caretaking role was kicking in, all my self-doubts, all my da-da-da-da-da. Do I cancel? Do I not? And I thought, this just isn't fun where I'm putting my energy right now. So what can I do to shift my perspective? And if I'm going to be teaching others that this is what they can do for themselves, hello, let's start listening to yourself. So this afternoon was this, okay, the advice I got one time was, if you offer something and nobody shows up, you know what, show up for yourself, put the same amount of energy and love and intention into it. And for example, act as if you've got 100 people in front of you and they're dying to hear what you have to offer. So I'm offering that to you because I did that. And honestly, my whole energy shifted. I can't even explain it. It was like magic. So if you're ever in a situation where you're throwing a party and you don't get as many people or the right, the people you want to act as if it's this whole process of manifesting. It's what is my desire? This is my intention. Yes, I wish I had 100 people sitting there looking back at me right now. But if I'm living in the present moment, this is what is, and it is magical. So I think tonight is going to be amazing. It's also going to be amazing, whoever finds this recording. And at the same time, setting that intention for something bigger. So if you are there wishing you were part of a teen gathering, set that intention. You may be here next time. If you're on this call wishing there were 20 people on this call, set that intention. Grant, there's a massive number of souls listening to you in this moment as sharing your starseed self. So I just really wanted to verbalize that, because one, evolving myself, I don't ever expect myself, nor could I be that teacher of mainstream that like plans the lesson plans and shows up on a call and I'm going to teach you something. It is so not that. I am evolving as I get excited to learn something. I want to pass it on to you. As I watch all of you learn and grow, it's this mutual co-creation. And I just really hope that energy comes across. And I love doing this, and I'm just so glad that we are here tonight. So with that, let's kind of set this energetic container by I'll walk you through all of us, just a little bit of a centering meditation here to get ourselves started. So if you'd like to just begin taking some deep, easy breathing, settling your body into this present moment, relaxing as much as you can in the physical conditions that you might be in right now. As you breathe, just be aware of any random thoughts, to-do lists, homework, tests tomorrow. If you can, just gently set those thoughts aside. Sometimes letting them float into white clouds floating by with a blue background, just breathing them out. We can call them back in if we need to at the end of this time. As you breathe and find yourself relaxing, center in to your heart space, your heart center. Feeling your breathing into your heart, the place that is our portal to source, in our higher heart, just above our heart chakra. It's called the atom seed. It's the very seed of our existence. And by getting in touch with that space, in that still point, is that recognition of ourself as God, as our source. So breathe into that space, feeling its energy expand through your physical body. Calling in healing energies to allow this human physical suits to absorb the healing pure lights, accelerating any kind of dis-ease or discomfort in our physical body. Knowing that miracles are possible. We invite the germs to leave us and go back to where they came from. Expanding our lights through our body, through the rooms that we're in, into our neighborhoods. Stretching further and further, we are that expansive light. And as it continues to grow, we know, and what we're going to talk about tonight is just being that empathic self. As you breathe and expand, do so without any concern of picking up energies. As we shine our light bright and send it outward, the energies of the collective stay where they're at. It's like this love impenetrable shield that we are expanding, not accepting at this time. So allow it to expand, covering the country you're in, expanding, surrounding the world. So breathe, expanding further into the cosmos. And feel that space that's opening up within you. It's that space that is you. As we do so, we call in the guides and the angels, the collectives that work with us, supporting us on our mission here in this human suit on this planet. As we drop our energy down through our physical body, from our feet into the earth, being that influence of our energy for Gaia, as well as accepting the support that she offers us. And as you breathe, feel this connection above and below, just passing through our physical body. Knowing that we can call and draw on this energy at all times, strictly by putting our attention and our intention. And we are this channel. So as we come together in this community and set this intention like a beautiful bubble around us, emanating and sharing, while at the same time being empowered within that own energy field that surrounds each of us. And as you set your intention for the night, what is it that you would like to gain from this evening? What is it that you would like to give to this community of beings here live and recorded? This energy transmission is in the moment, whether you're listening now or repeated listening in the future. And as you set your intention, you set the larger intention for any healing, beautiful expressions of ourself to be manifested in this moment. As you take that final breath, just allow yourself to be present in your body and in this moment. And here we are. And with that, we could probably end, right? Let's just stop in a bliss state. Wow. Okay, so Grant Sachs, the man, here with us today. When I first met Grant, it was when our Conscious Youth Group just started back in 2018. And we've got a bunch of kids on the call. And then there's this elder, this young man who's 17 years old with this like changing deep guy's voice and the wisdom of a master. And I'm like, wow. I mean, I was so taken by your presence back then. And as you've participated and volunteered even in person at our event, it was just such a pleasure. So considering our teen group tonight, you came to mind as a perfect, boy, wisdom keeper. And what can I offer this group of teenagers but an opportunity to explore what it is to be a teenager? And, you know, you're being 63 is harder for me to remember. And so I call you in, sir, as that one who's been through it and is continuing to grow into your adulthood. And it's just so cool to be part of being witness to your unfolding as this awesome starseed guy. So welcome.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be here, and it's great to talk to you again.
Yeah. What I didn't say, so how old are you now? 21?
21, yeah.
21. Okay, so Grant is a senior. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Where do you go to school? Was it?
I go to Wayne State University.
Wayne
It's in
State.
Detroit. Mhm.
Okay, yeah, in Detroit. Okay, so studying to be a psych major, or you're finishing your degree up?
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, so Grant, I also know of him as a awesome tarot intuitive, and was so excited to hear that you're doing this like professionally now. It's like, I know a professional tarot reader. It's so cool. So as a method for honing your own spiritual abilities, I definitely want to talk about that. And mark your calendars, because as of now, Grant, let's see, what date is this? At our youth gathering in December 27th. I've invited Grant to come back and actually talk to the group on tarot and teach them a little bit about it and how you guys might be able to use that as a tool for your own development. So very cool. So besides you studying Buddhism and mysticism and knowing the most important things, oh my gosh, you just are on an incredible journey. So I'm going to stop talking and let you just like add anything you'd like. In addition, you're going to be leading us into a short meditation and a activity to really kind of discover your own soul's most important thing. That's so neat.
Well, I think that was a pretty solid introduction. I don't really have anything to add about myself. Yeah. So how did you want to start?
Let me make what I ask all of our guests, because you really are a guest, even though you just don't feel like a guest to me. So a little bit about your growing up. Like when you were younger, did you recognize yourself as being empathic or intuitive, or like when did you realize that you may not be exactly like your friends in the neighborhood, or how was that for you?
For me growing up, I always felt different. I think we can all relate to that feeling. Anyone listening to this call probably. Um, my younger years were very, very confusing for me and lacked a sort of sense of understanding of really what was going on around me. There was a lot of chaos for me growing up, and being, we could say, energetically sensitive, or just sensitive in general as a being, in that environment kind of made it even harder than it might be in general, to really get a sense of like, what are these, this dimension of being that's, so sensitive to the things around me. Because, sorry, there's like a feedback loop. I don't mean to interrupt, but I just want to make sure that.
Okay, and I'm going to mute myself too. Just
okay. All good. Okay. So yeah, trying to remember, the question was essentially, do I remember, what was it?
Just growing up in general, and what's, as you were just talking, I'm realizing, when we're grown up, we don't, anything that's innate in us, I mean, it doesn't even stand out like a gift. Like I talked about the kids and the superpowers and all this, and I've come to realize that they probably don't even know what I'm talking about. It's kind of like having, red hair. It's like, oh, wow, tell me about your red hair. When did you first have it? And when did you notice that it's like, it's just a natural part of who you are. So as you're sharing how to get a handle on life from even the sensitive perspective without knowing, quote unquote, what sensitive even is, it must have really been challenging in that sense.
Yeah. I think, I had like, external circumstances that made it also confusing or difficult to really navigate things. But I think for anybody, it can be difficult to really, well, what I try to tell people a lot is like, we're born without context. We don't really know what life is, and we're constant. Even when you get older, like, as an adult, each moment is just based off what you've known from the past, like at each moment is non-contextual in the same way. Like we are constantly living in the unknown and trying to meet that dimension, which is what life is, in the best way possible. And that's why actually it can be really, really important to narrow in on what our most important thing is, meaning what we are in service to, what we value, and how we want to show up. Because if we're really clear on those things, it can make it significantly easier to navigate that unknown dimension of reality profoundly.
Do you want to go there now and say more about that? I mean, not to actually lead the activity right now, but to even
no, whatever questions you feel called
okay.
to ask.
All right. Well, let's kind of go with. I've got a number of questions that I know are appropriate, or a lot of them are questions that I had as teenagers too. Now, I had a difficult background growing up. My parents should have been divorced a lot earlier than they were, so family situations were very volatile. Lived in a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty. Best to be quiet because you never know what would prompt a reaction back that, again, was fearful. So I had a very emotionally disturbing, say, childhood, and found solace in school, ironically. Yet it was very different back then, just energetically and school-wise. So where the distractibility in that, for me, it was stable. So I kind of had a reverse of a lot of kids today where school is so unbalancing and unnerving for them. But in that brings up all the questions of feeling different and what is normal and what is safe to share. And you said that you kind of felt different all through that. What do you how did you manage that? And I guess even with friends, did you have any outlets to really share that real part of you?
Well, there's a lot of different facets.
Too many questions. Yeah.
Sorry, what?
Too many questions in that. And then we got a question. Did Grant attend public school? And did he tell friends about his abilities? Yeah, that's on our list too. Yeah. Take any and all of those there.
I did. I attended actually like 10 different schools growing up. I moved around very, very frequently, never staying for more than 2 years at a time until I reached high school. I attended public school the majority of my time. I did also attend private school for about a total of 3 years, and I went to a therapeutic boarding school in Utah for a year in about 8th grade, and I did go to military school too as well. So,
wow,
quite the broad experience of the varietals of school. But as far as did I tell my friends about my abilities, so to speak, I think it's become increasingly common to discuss the energetic reality, so to speak, among the younger generation. And there was, discussion about it. I was open about tarot with my friends in high school, at least. In my earlier years, I do remember being told not to talk about, the energetic realm because it wasn't really a thing that people discussed back then. Yeah.
Now, when you're saying energetic realm, what specifically, what were some of the things that, what we would be calling superpowers today? We've got the talking to animals and communicating with nature and seeing auras and being telepathic. And what are some of the intuitive gifts that you were carrying around with you or possessed?
For me, I didn't really grow up with this sort of structured, how could I say, such as young ascended masters, or that really tries to cultivate that for children. And so really diving into like the idea of like abilities and such wasn't really something that I grew up around. And it wasn't until I got much older that I started to really pick up on like the intuitive sense of things. But um, for me, tarot was probably my strongest thing that I relied on intuitively growing up. For me, most of what I am talking to when I speak about the energetic realm that I would or would not discuss growing up would be around stuff like chakras or meditation or anything like intuition in general wasn't something that I could go to for a couple of years I was at a Catholic school and I remember not being allowed to talk about that to my friends because it was odd, you know.
Yeah. So, but what specific, I guess I want to kind of narrow it down. Give me one example that something that you knew or was told, like, don't ever bring that up. Like what's something that specific?
Specifically, I remember not being told not to talk about like ghosts or spirits to people at Catholic school, actually, and like, entities type of thing.
Okay. So, which means you were aware of entities and those things from an
In
early
a
age,
sense.
even though you didn't necessarily have words, language that we use today.
Yeah, I remember growing up, I dealt with when I was much younger, around this time, which would be fourth and fifth grade, with like a significant amount of like, you could call it paranormal stuff going on when I was younger, but it was mostly like just, I would have like panic attacks every night because there was like this just ominous sense of things going on. And I have a couple ghost experiences from when I was younger, but
Yeah. But so what I want to do is take advantage of this time to really like be specific. And like I really do think that we generalize a lot, which makes it harder to relate. And I know some of the kids on the call, I mean, are really dealing with telepathic things, seeing spirits all the time. Um, you know, perhaps, just interacting with people, it takes a while, even growing up, to know whether what you're seeing is really there or is it imaginary, because they both have the same magnitude of realism for us in our lives and stuff like that. Did you have those same kind of things? Did
no,
your
I
mom
don't think
believe you? Did you ever share it with your mom? Like, hey, I got a ghost in my closet, and like get a reaction to that?
Sort of. I wasn't having anything like telepathy or any of the more out there type of abilities, so to speak, that I know many people who attend this tend to, younger kids today might be able to tap into something like that. For me, it wasn't really something that was encouraged to really delve into or look into or open up to. The only instruction I really got, which was from my mom, was to really foster my intuition and to just be in touch with an aspect of myself that was a deeper knowing. I did, share if there was a ghost experience, I would tell my mom, and it wasn't weird for her. So it wasn't like I received a weird reaction, but it wasn't like something I would go and tell all the other 8-year-olds,
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm. I hope that was specific enough. I can't really dive into something that wasn't an aspect of my experience,
Sure. Well, let me read this. Let me read. So did Grant have to deal with energies in his school, like vision, spirits, spiritual energies attached to historical topics? Ooh, that's really good. If so, how did he deal? Did he have many spirits asking him for attention while he was studying in class? Wow. How challenging is that?
No, I did not. Not that I was aware of. You could interpret my difficulties internally as a child as being influenced by like outside forces, so to speak, like negative energies. But if they were, I wouldn't have known. As I said, I had an extraordinarily chaotic, maybe a better word would be like I could not make sense of things growing up. And it was like a whole muddled, everything was jumbled together, and I couldn't discern really what internal things were mine or not mine, if that makes sense.
Okay, so are we talking more looking back, recognizing your own empathic abilities? Like some of the turmoil obviously was
Right.
very
Yeah.
present in the
Environmental.
world around you and your family, but also picking up energies, whether it was from school communities or the collective.
Right. Definitely like these environmental, whether it's energetic or physical environment things that were just impacting me. But I had such a lack of center in myself at that time that I couldn't really discern what was mine and what wasn't. I didn't even really know how to make sense of what I was feeling. I didn't even know what I was feeling. I was just kind of going through life every day like that. So
Yeah. Um, so my next question that you're going to be actually talking about tonight is, what, looking back now with that experience and hindsight, what would have been if you were that young guy again today, knowing what you know, what could have helped you ground and center? And is that really what you're going to be sharing with us tonight?
a bit, yeah. There are a few things I think that could have helped, but one of them I think would be absolutely meditation. Standalone is probably the most profound practice anyone can have, because I think it really, mm, in one facet, it's really what I call kind of clearing the RAM in our system, right? You've got all this background stuff going on, whether it's all these energies from the outside or from inside or whatever. You've got all that stuff going on, and it's kind of in the background of our minds, and it takes up a lot of our awareness, so to speak, whether we're conscious of what's going on in the subconscious or not. So when you meditate, that really clears out all that background stuff. So I call it clearing the RAM. And you'll notice that you're significantly more able to be present and aware, and to really hone your attention in on one feeling or one facet of your experience, which can really, really profoundly make it. Like, for example, as a young person that I was dealing with all of that chaos, um, being able to have a moment of stillness would have allowed me to kind of gather my senses, make sense of something, have a center. If you can't find stability outside, it's very important. Either way, even if you have it outside, you should have inner stability. And that comes from a sense of stillness inside.
Mm-hmm. When did you first become aware of meditation, and how did you start? And there's so many forms, like what did it look like for you?
Absolutely. I was aware of meditation from a young age. I remember my mom I would get worked up and she would tell me to take deep breaths. But the thing is, and I regret this, is I was so worked up that telling me to, calm down, essentially, I took that as like I was frustrated. It would make me angry, so I wouldn't do it. If I had, I think I would have fared so much better growing up than I did. I became aware of the fact that I needed to meditate as I grew up. For the next decade, I kind of like knew, and it didn't really become so relevant to me until after I moved out to go to college. The first year of college, I did it a few times and I had really good experiences with it, but it wasn't until COVID when I moved out of the dorm and into my own apartment that I then spent, hours upon hours meditating over that next, the last couple of years, and it really profoundly impacted my life right away.
Yeah.
Totally.
What kind of meditation did you do? More stillness, just breathing, or guided? Or how
A
did you
few
do?
different types. Yeah. So what I started with was just focusing, sitting in focusing on the breath, or I really like to focus on the nose area where the breath comes in and out at the nostrils. That for me has been very centering for my attention. And that can be helpful for people who feel like their minds are racing too much, to do meditation, because it can really just kind of settle the attention down into something. And so it doesn't have to be on the nose, it can be on the belly as it expands and contracts.
Can you actually talk us through like what you would do? I mean, breathe a couple and demonstrate for us and where you would put your attention.
Yeah, I would close my eyes and I'd sit. Doesn't matter where you sit. Ideally, somewhere where your back is supported. If you're doing a longer session, if not, you can sit anywhere really. I don't recommend a bed or a couch, because it can kind of, especially a bed, you don't want the way your spine sits on the cushion is not very supportive for the back, I've come to find. But so yeah, you sit, and posture can be very important, but it's not always critical. But it can kind of, in our body, if we set the intention to be somewhat alert and hold that, it can be sort of send the message to the mind to be alert, because sometimes if we're too relaxed, our minds can get dull when we meditate, and it kind of gets hazy, which can be pleasant, but it's not necessarily conducive to insight. So if you're doing the focusing on the breath meditation, it is just as simple as closing your eyes, and you take in just however feels to be a deep breath for you. I like to breathe in and out through my nose, but you can breathe in through the nose, out through the mouth. It's not really important. It's just whatever feels appropriate for you. And just focus on the sensation. And you can play around with where you're focusing. You know, and so then it expands into what other forms of meditation I've done. Like, for example, I don't know if really a term for it, but I call it like body awareness, which is just the sensations in the body and just playing around with landing attention on different parts of the body, especially coming out of the mental realm and kind of moving it down lower into the torso or into the legs. And you'll notice how that changes your quality of attention or your quality of consciousness. Where we place our attention or where we neglect our attention can really impact our perception of things in the moment. And so really, you can train your awareness to be more sensitive to the sensory realm. So you might want to play around with hearing and just open your awareness wide, get open inside as if we are awareness, then being wide open and receiving, and you just listen to the sounds. And you do that for as long as feels appropriate, And you'll really start to notice that something, as you do these sorts of things, it can really loosen up this contracted energy inside, some might call that the ego. So that contracted energy, when we open up our awareness to a more expansive state, it just allows it to kind of loosen up all that old stuck energy. And if you really get into the body awareness, which I also, another level might be called somatic processing, which I didn't know it was a thing, but I ended up doing it as a natural. So it went from the focusing meditation to the body awareness and then somatic processing, which I started to notice about a year into my journey that as I would sit in body awareness, certain memories might come up, or certain thoughts that would have a specific energetic contraction in my body would, there's like a certain flavor profile to how it feels to be aware of that memory or kind of thought, and just feeling it through. And you'll notice that if you just sit with that particular memory's flavor without judging it or pushing it away, especially important when it's a tough emotion, to just give yourself the space to sit with it. And you'll notice that the longer you sit with that feeling, it'll eventually begin to, you could say dissolve, but I like to think of it as kind of alchemizing. And there's a sense of wholeness that's left. It's almost like taking something that's been divorced from ourself. Like if we think of ourselves as fractured psychologically or as a being, energetically, returning that piece of ourselves back to, what's central to us. And so that really can bring a sense of wholeness, and it really alchemizes the energetic system, to really just flow better. And you'll feel it's very perceptually obvious, the sense of wholeness that results from that kind of somatic processing. And yeah, you might just want to play around with the different senses. Sometimes I like to meditate with my eyes open a lot, and I just kind of notice what it is to see. What is the experience of this moment when I'm not thinking about it? What's just the raw moment like? And you'll be surprised at just how amazing reality is when you're really in tune with that sensory dimension. I don't think of them as being separate from the energetic. I think sensory is intimately, if not the same as the energetic realm. It's just different flavors of the energy, sight, hearing, the somatic or the intuitive.
Yeah. Well, and especially, I mean, we're here for this human sensory process. And even like the word ascension really sometimes mistakenly implies that we should leave our body and
Right.
be elsewhere, when in reality, this time around, ascension is really an ascension of being rooted in our body. And many of the kids today, and you may be listening on this call, it's easier to, not easier, there's a sense of not wanting to be here. And as you were saying, this life is really confusing. It's challenging. All the messages that are around us that are coming in don't make sense to what our heart knows to be true. And it's in that, where do we believe truth? Is it within ourselves, or is it what everybody else is telling us? And part of our own ascension as star children, as beings who are here to bring this higher vibration to the planet, we do that best when we do exactly what you're saying, is taking that inner time to find the stillness, and even being aware of body sensations. Starting in the root is like the place. The lower two chakras, to have some ability to be in ourselves, is where all of our innate abilities are going to be grounded from, to be expressed more easily. So it's almost like a backward thinking. Wow, I'm going to be spiritual, and I'm going to be out there into the cosmos. And that's great, because there's all kinds of insights and understanding, but it really is starting in this human body. Let me go back. So a question came in. So as you're speaking, then basically is what you're saying, it's like reclaiming your energy lost through the day. So I know empathically, and I wanted to go back to even the comment about being distracted in school, even going through historical topics. This came up at another meeting, and one of the girls shared, and this was like one of the most gentle souls I've ever met, and soft-spoken and kind-hearted and aware and all that stuff. She said she was in a history class, and they were teaching about the Trail of Tears, and what was in the text was just not the lived reality at the time. And now she was, I don't know, middle school maybe. What came through was a memory of a past life of being one of those people on that trail, and the violence and and saw her people destroyed around her. And this was being taught in such a neutral and flowery, the text like kind of way. She took her book and like flung it across the room in the classroom, got totally angry, like, tell the real story. Why don't you tell the real story? And of course, mom gets called, and there it goes. So yeah, that's going to just pop up and like likely surprise the daylights out of whoever's experiencing it. And it's gonna, wow, I don't know if whoever asked the question, do you want to talk about what it's like for you in school and some of the struggles that you're experiencing? Do you feel comfortable to talk about any of that?
Yeah, especially when I'm in history class, I get a lot of visions of the things that we're talking about, and just memories of past lives start coming up.
So what do you find yourself doing or needing to do, or how do you support yourself through that?
I just kind of try to like ignore it sometimes, and sometimes I just need to take a break.
Do you share one of the other questions that came in is like sharing some of these abilities or what's actually happening? Are you able to share any of this and get support from other people or friends? Or are you just pretty much like surviving through it on your own?
I have anxiety, so I can take like anxiety breaks like that, but I don't tell them about my abilities.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you ever, like, do you have any friends that know some of the stuff that, happens?
I had one, but our friendship didn't quite work out.
Mm.
Why don't you explain why?
Do you want to explain why?
She was like pretending to be really spiritual at home. She like meddled with a lot of the spiritual stuff, She used a Ouija boards a lot and stuff like that.
Mm. Okay. Yeah. My two thoughts on that. One, I was at a in-person event and talking with a group of teenagers, and it was just really apparent of how hard it is to share. And one of the girls talked about her best friend. It took her 2 years to get up enough courage to tell her friend that she has a spirit that hangs out on the ceiling with her at night as a companion, as a support, as whatever. And she finally got enough courage to want to really share that part of herself with her best friend. And the girl turns around and like accuses her of being the devil and throws all this religious beliefs that she had, and just it was crushing. It was, your best friend, just like it was crushing. And it would, such compassion for all of you to be in this world where you crave to express who you really are. And so many people just aren't able to hear it or see it or accept it.
Yeah.
Some of the anxiety is that, as Grant was kind of half joking about, when mom says, take a deep breath and get through it. I mean, of course, you're not going to want to hear that, especially from a mom. And then the message is, you're not okay. You must be doing it wrong. So I want you to be different and breathe. And that's the double whammy, is that self-belief of there's something wrong with me. And I think growing up with that kind of anxiety, the only way society knows how to deal with that is, well, you must have special needs and we'll give you extra breaks, which is all great.
Mm-hmm.
But
More different.
there's reasons that anxiety exists because of your high sensitivities. And
Yeah.
I hear the little prompt things to share. I'm going to stop talking and kind of let you like take this time and really explore this.
Say that again.
Is there more you want to share on this and get some reaction to, or just have a chance to really speak it and in a safe place? Or
A lot of times during social studies, spirits come to visit me, especially when we're talking about like traumatic stuff like wars.
wow. So
Sometimes I get thrown into like their own little reality, videos, like and memories of war. Like I'm one of the soldiers there.
do you, obviously I'm glad that the school, it sounds like the school is there, and if you ask, they'll give you some time.
Yes.
Once you're able to take that time, how do you process all of this, or what helps relieve some of this so you can at least rejoin and try to survive the rest of your day?
I like taking walks to process it and sometimes running my hands underwater.
You know, so many have shared the water and allowing that to flow over them has been really helpful.
Yeah. It can be very grounding.
If I may, a huge part that I think might be relevant to the water over the hands or even taking a shower, which I know works for me, is that if you think about it, there's like a really direct, it brings your attention back into the body. It's a sensory thing, you know.
Yeah.
The water itself might be cleansing energetically, but also the just bringing the attention out of the mental realm. You know, our minds react to everything and constantly are sending messages on how to feel about what's going on. But bringing the attention back out of the mind and into the body, which is inherently going to be a more still aspect of our experience than the mind, is really helpful, especially when we have a lot of that chaotic energetic stuff going on. So yeah, washing your hands or running them underwater or shower or what walks even, you know, are really good for getting out of that mental space and being able to feel what's going on too. If you've got a lot going on in the body as a result of these experiences that are going on, you know, spiritually, you know, we're talking about spirits coming to you, being able to, we can't really process that from the mind. We can only be with it as it shows up in our bodies. So, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, knowing that this happens a lot in the social studies, have you ever tried or that talked about like setting your space proactively beforehand? And like what I mean is almost like, you know, doing some of the, I'm sure even like what we did tonight and setting your own energy space. But what I guess is coming to mind is we had somebody on, Catherine Flynn. I don't know if you were ever here when she spoke, but she's a medium. And did with us a process that was taking our power back with these spirits that would come through and doing it through a method of setting our space, setting our energy, and seeing a door in front of us. And when we open that door, we allow the influence or the entrance of these spirits that are just drawn to us because that's one of our abilities. But then deliberately closing the door when it's a time, sometimes at night, we don't want spirits coming in at night. And so it's almost like a command given to the spiritual world that, you know what, now's not a good time for me. You're not welcome. I love you. We'll talk later if we need to. But for now, my door is closed to you. And if I hear you knocking, I'm going to ask for you to come back later. I mean, and as silly as that might sound, what that's doing is really letting our desires known, and most entities are going to honor that, and they're going to almost welcome the time when you do welcome them in because you interact with them differently, as opposed to getting either scared or anxious or not now kind of thing.
Yeah, I was here during that meeting, and I do set my space sometimes and tell them that they can't come right now.
Do you find that it's helpful and kind of works, or not
Yes,
so
it
much?
can be.
Yeah.
It can be. Sometimes they're just really just persistent, and I have to deal with them.
It might be important as well to, if this feels true for you, to recognize that it's not your job. Just because you can, it's not your job to deal with what they're dealing with, and that might be the supposed assumption based on, well, if I can, then I should, but
Yeah.
if it's affecting you in that way, you have, maybe there is a belief that you should because it's the right thing to do, or it's compassionate or such and such. But really the compassionate thing to do is to take care of yourself first and foremost.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's great advice. And I'll share a story with you that this is triggering for me. I had somebody come to me a couple years ago, the mom, and truly her daughter was just in dire straits, very depressed, didn't know whether she should put her on medication or not, went to a number of various healers and channels, and I was able to at least hook her up with another parent, and they got somebody local to assist. But what ended up, the advice that came through the higher selves was this, just what Grant is kind of saying, and what you likely have a sense of yourself. Your mission and your abilities may truly be for assisting souls to pass over or to heal, or that whole mediumship ability or the telepathic. You're, as a teenager, growing into your abilities. Your contract on this planet, the message being there, you're here for joy. I don't know how, let me think about this. This is your time to be a kid. And I don't mean to say that in a discounting kind of way, but this is your growing years. This is your kind of like, it's not even an initiation time. You're going to be finding that your gifts are developing, and you're going to start recognizing your gifts. And obviously you are and have been for a number of years. But the expectation that your mission is to start now is not usually correct. And I don't mean that, again, with any kind of judgment, but these first 20 years or so is really meant to hone in to our own beingness, do everything that a kid's supposed to do, and have these relationships, and be in joy, and have friends, and explore, and do silly things, and these heavier collective missions, which is what this girl was picking up. She was just like soaking in the pains of the world. And her mission is going to be transmuting some of that. But the message from spirit and guides came in to tell her, look, your time is coming. It's not yet, nor does it need to be. Find the joy of who you are, get strong in that sense of self, who you are. And as Grant is beautifully saying, don't accept the responsibility. It's not yet your time. And this may or may not resonate for you, but if it does, maybe accept this almost as a layer of peace and let any obligation that you might feel be at rest. Know and recognize these gifts are getting stronger in you, and you're going to know the time that you're going to be of best service to others. And when that time comes, it won't come with the level of anxiety that it's bringing you now. And maybe use that anxiety as a sign that it isn't time, if that makes sense. Does this make sense at all?
Good. Does that make sense to you?
Yes.
Does it seem like it fits at all?
Yes.
Does it bring any comfort in hearing that, or not so much?
Yes, a little bit.
Yeah. Because the mom of this girl shared that with me. And the other thing that she also shared was that the discovery, her empathic self, her high heart was open. It was wide open, and she really needed, in meditation and in through her own commanding of her energy, to walk around less open, if that makes sense. It's our high heart that is going to attract all of the collective's pain and worries and this generation and past generations. And as we bring it in, we're going to have the tools and the ability to allow it to transmute through us and heal. But until that time comes, and one of the things was helpful for her was to wear like an amethyst, and you may intuitively be doing this, but wear an amethyst over, and if you could see where mine, so right your breastbone would be right above your heart chakra, is where your higher heart is where this portal of opening is. And that kind of acts as a protective shield to not be so open to what was coming in from the outside. And between that self-knowledge of giving herself a break, at not literally needing to take on the pains of the world yet in her life, and this tool of wearing this crystal shifted so much for her. And it gave her that power back to be in control of how it's happening and how she's experiencing it. It was really quite an amazing insight. Oh my goodness, you guys. What challenging lives you've chosen to partake in this present day. Okay, so let's just jump into this awesome topic of the most important thing. And earlier you talked about just even when our external worlds are so chaotic, going in and being able to hone in on that priority that we know is specific to us can really give us direction. Mm-hmm. and assist no matter what our age is. So you want to just like talk more about that and how you came to learn all that?
Sure. Trying to really feel on where to begin on the topic. So there's a feedback loop again. Sorry.
No, now do you hear it? Okay, here, let me just mute myself.
Okay, and if you want to like interject, just press the space bar. That way you don't have to keep clicking the button. It'll unmute you if you press the space bar. Okay, so the most important thing, I guess I'll start with like what do I mean by that? And with when I say the most important thing, what I do mean is what we're in service to and being conscious of that. The majority of our lives for most people are spent motivated by unconscious beliefs or conditioned patterns of seeking and what we think about things that are not necessarily true, might be assumed or borrowed from what our parents or teachers tell us or friends tell us. And discovering what your most important thing is a really intimate practice. And it doesn't necessarily, it's not like you might know it right away. It can take months even or years to really get clear on what is your most important thing. It might be easier to do sort of like a question and response thing on this.
Yeah, okay. So most important thing versus setting goals and priorities, is there a difference?
In one sense, and in the same sense, they're very similar. I think a lot of people in this community are very familiar with like intention setting. It's very similar to that. It's more so on the broad scale, what is the intention of my life? What is the intention of my being? How do I want to show up in this world? And these are really powerful questions that when asked and followed through to the end where we get an answer, really have the power to transform our lives, probably more so than really anything else we might endeavor to do. What it does when we're really asking, what is my most important thing? What is my life in service to? It reorients our entire trajectory. The rest of our lives is impacted by becoming conscious of what it actually is that we want to be in service to. Most of our lives are on autopilot, and if we get clear on how we want to show up, it profoundly impacts the result of how we show up is what our lives is or are. There's really no better way to define what a life is than how it shows up and what it's in service to. I really think that what I am is what my intentions are.
Yeah, now it's really deep, really fast. Yeah. So I'm gonna bring us a little closer to the surface. Just
sure.
No apologies whatsoever. So I'm gonna explain the way that
I didn't say sorry. I just said sure.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, don't apologize. And I'm glad you didn't. So I'm gonna kind of jump you in two spots at the same time, so you could like bilocate your consciousness here. Okay, so as a 21-year-old learning about this probably within the last couple of years, maybe. And you mentioned that there was a book. You want to mention that?
Sure. It's called The Most Important Thing by Adyashanti. It is on Amazon for about $16 for anyone interested.
Deshante,
Adyashanti. It is Adyashanti. It means primordial peace in Sanskrit.
Oh, well, there you go. Okay. And obviously it had a profound effect on you. Do you think your age so you're in college and you're making these decisions, yet when I knew you at 17, I think you still had, from what I remember, a pretty clear mission path that you wanted to be working with people. And what I remember you saying is really going in with a psychology degree while keeping the uniqueness of your own vision as a star seed. That 3D tangible degree is going to give you the credibility within this world that other people are going to be able to say, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about, versus even the intuitive. You already knew what you were talking about. Obviously, college gives us some knowledge and experience in that way to ground it a little more. But as far as the kids listening to this, hopefully parents are too, so we'll all get what we need to hear.
It's relevant for all ages. It is pretty much a perennial question.
Yeah, but then the difference of expectation. So I remember, you know, as a high schooler, it's like, well, people are pushing us right now as high schoolers to like pick a career path. What's your mission? It's like, heck, I'm still a kid. I'm still figuring it out. And here, perhaps one of the biggest decisions in someone's life is being asked of a teenager, which on the one hand is just like so unfair to begin with. But as we discern this, if we don't know a solid inkling of what our mission is, how do we even answer the question, what's the most important thing?
Mm-hmm. That is great. A great question, because when we start with something like, for example, what do you want to be when you grow up? And most of us aren't really actually clear on what I still am not sure what I want to do. And I'm in my last year of college. I had a great idea before, but when I actually really started to ask myself, it became less certain. And I think that's a lot of why people are hesitant to really ask these questions, is the uncertainty. We want to feel safe with an answer. You know, we were talking about the unknown in the last recording and how life is a constant unknown, you know, dimension. And having answers about who we are and what we identify with and who we're going to be, that can feel enticing to jump the gun and come up with something that's not necessarily true for ourselves in return for a sense of certainty. And what's important when asking these questions is to be willing to not know the answer, because as I said before, it can be months before you know, or years even, any question, let alone what is my life going to be in service to most of all. And so when we're talking about career, you know, it's the same thing. And if you don't have an idea right off the bat of what's true for you as far as a career goes, scale it back to actually the more fundamental, what is the most important thing? Because all of those extra things like are going to be built off of our fundamental intention. You know, if you find that your most important thing is love, you might find that there's something that lights up that soul value that you can then build off of that fundamental intention for your life and find a career that somehow relates back to that fundamental belief, or a more fundamental, you know, doesn't have to be the number one thing, but it probably should or would correlate back to the few things that you find to be most important for you. So, you know, really getting back to the essentials is helpful for those odd questions that adults might be asking teenagers.
Yeah. And so do you find the types of quote unquote most important things are more the nebulous, like love, compassion, service, healing, those type of answers? And then from that rock of a foundation, would the next level up kind of be identifying what you're passionate about and what your interests are, and things more tangible, like hobbies and sport, you know, that's what's
totally related. I think why it's so there's a quote from the book by Adia that is the most important thing is what is your most important thing. And because when you really get to that answer, everything else, as I just said, is built upon that. in the sense that when you're clear, let's say someone's most important thing is love, then you can orient everything that you do. What is it? You can ask the question, what does it mean to show up as love? Or what does it mean to embody truth, if that's your most important thing? And if you're really honest with yourself and you listen deeply, not from the mind, but from your deeper being, your deeper knowing, however that, whatever that means to you, you will find that everything lines up in accordance to that most important thing. If you're honest and showing up as is true for your being, these questions of like how am I, they're really like irrelevant in the grand scheme of things, because everything will line up to orient around, if you're really truly focusing on embodying what is true for you. It's a moment to moment live inquiry. It's not an answer that comes once. Your most important thing today might not be the same, most important thing tomorrow. And it's also, relative, right now, if I, have an emergency pop up, my most important thing is going to change. But, the baseline, it comes back to, and really focusing on that kind of clears up these questions of like, what am I passionate about and how do I want to show up? As far as career or vocation goes, or what college do I want to go to? And there's a spectrum of the most important thing and the important things in my life, and just focusing on those things will clear up probably almost all of your answers, if you stay with them and you don't settle for what the mind might give you as a jump the gun answer, or a conditioned answer. A lot of people think that for example, maybe you grew up in a household that, or a community that values service. And so you feel like you're supposed to be selfless and giving and compassionate in all things that you do. That might not be your most important thing as a being. It might be what you were told is the most important thing. So that's where the honesty and the listening is really important. Sorry, I'm kind of rambling.
Yeah,
There's a lot to talk.
There's so much. I mean, like obviously there's books about this that, more than 45 minutes. Well, the one thing I just want to come back to is we're using language when we show up. And I just want to like break that down a little bit. I mean, what we're meaning, when we just do our daily activity. It's like when we show, like, when I talked earlier about, do I just even cancel tonight and all these doubts, and is this right or not, or working, or what am I doing wrong? And you know what, if I just take the action, move ahead, take one step forward and show up, because I know this is important to me. It doesn't matter what the outside looks like. It doesn't look, oh my gosh, nobody, I don't have large numbers. Maybe there's no interest, and all those things. If I just honor my truth that what we're doing here tonight has tremendous value, and you and I just show up and move ahead with what I know is true, that opens the door for everything else to fall into place. So it's following our knowing, not getting scared and shutting down, or not following through because of fears and doubts. And when we do that, we show up for the integrity of ourself. We know we're being true to ourself. And that's what we mean by like when we show up.
Yeah, I love that. And it's something that, if we're talking about soul values, is another thing. And these are all soul values, and we all carry each of them to some degree. It's just, which one do I emphasize in my being? But what you were just saying, you said to kind of be with our fears, despite the, we're not going to ever get rid of fear, but it's to courage could be a soul value that we're calling upon or evoking in that act of showing up despite all of that fear. Courage is a really important soul value. And what does it mean to embody that in everything we do? And for me, like one of probably my most important thing would be truth or love. Those are kind of two sides of the same coin. And in this call, if we're talking about what it means to show up or embody our most important thing, before and during the call, the continual reminder in myself to be honest in everything I say, what is true about my own life as I speak, and not trying to gloss over anything, or not, there's a humility in being that human, messy self. If I share things like that, I still mess up all the time. As I said, when we were setting this up, like I'm still learning and growing, just like these teenagers and young Ascended Masters, and the parents too. Like it never stops. It's not like there's a finish line for, awakening or embodiment.
Haven't reached it at 63, and obviously, yeah, no, there is no finish line this lifetime or follow. But I hear you, yeah. So it's really it's having that like stick in the sand in any question that shows up is where is it in relation to that? If it's really far away and off track. And I get caught up in the pros and cons in my head and the mental. I don't know what to do. I don't stop, take a breath, go back to that center point is what I hear you saying, and then ask the question again from that place.
Yeah, and when we do get into it, that's kind of what that meditation will be designed to kind of do. And I want to speak to truth in the sense that part of this is an exercise in truth. And if I say to be honest in everything you do, it also means to be honest with ourselves, because so often we are either in denial or we're choosing to not listen to something in the back of our minds or our guts or our being or however we want to see it, that is nagging, and we kind of force our way through and continue to do what we think we're supposed to be doing and ignoring that deeper, quieter voice within. And this entire practice is just about being honest with yourself. And sometimes that means not knowing. We don't know a lot, and we pretend that we know so much. Like I was saying earlier, we come up with these ideas of what we're going to do or who we are, or, that's the fundamental spiritual question is, who am I? In traditions for thousands of years, who am I has been the central inquiry. And finding that answer is profound. And the reality is most of us don't really know. We grow up with ideas of who we are, and we take on what we're told we are. Might even be playing into these unconscious beliefs of I'm bad, or I'm a failure, or I'm not good enough, or whatever it might be. And really, if you're honest with yourself, is that true, or is that an assumption or a belief handed down? I could keep being rambling here, but I want to really just emphasize again to just be honest. And if you're always being truthful to yourself in life and with others, you can't really ever go wrong, A life that's lived not in truth is kind of like missing the entire point of existing. Showing up as what you are and being who you are fully, even if that includes the fears of being who you are, or the fears of being not good enough, or all the messy human stuff, that is the point of being. You don't want to hide any of it.
Yeah,
from yourself.
and going so the human self is here to have experiences, and you're saying you can't do it wrong. Now we may get ourselves into messy situations, that we wish we would have chosen differently. But one of the most important things in those experiences, if you can not fall into the self-talk of, oh my God, what a jerk I am. How could I be so stupid? I should have listened to myself. That's what we do after we make choices for an experience that wasn't in our highest, best interest, is more detrimental than what we did in the experience itself. So just as the advice of, you know, everybody listening here, not judging what we do is probably the biggest gift you can give to yourself at this young age. Is, yes, that experience, if we look at everything as an experience, it's neutral. There's no judgment right or wrong. Yes, I went out and got high last night with my friends. Now I wish I had some friends that I could go get high with, but I'm using that as an example. So yeah, I went out and I got high with my friends, and I got in all this trouble with my parents, and I woke up in the morning and I feel like crap and da 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 da. Okay, so go back to what was happening in the moment I made that decision. What did I learn from that? And at the bigger picture of being human, you can now say, wow, my soul had this amazing experience that it just didn't make me feel all that good about myself. So do I want to do that again? Or do I want to do it differently? Yeah. And yes, you may have to deal, whatever your family is, whatever society is, all that stuff is going to come in on you as judgment. But for you yourself to find that place within you of even self-forgiveness is what's coming through. Allow yourself to say, hey, okay, I had an experience. I learned from it. It doesn't make me a bad person. It does not make me a bad person. It doesn't make me stupid. Doesn't make me anything. It is what it was. Today, these are the choices that I'm making. Truly, if you can find some wisdom in that, it's just, you're going to either learn it now or you're going to learn it when you're 60, or you're going to learn it when you're 80, if at all. But that is one of the truest spiritual truths that you're going to want to find within your center, is that place of non-judgment. And just one more thing I'm going to add, and I'll let you go. As a teenager, what we're talking about here is that question of who am I? I truly just so want you to know that as a teenager, this is your time of going on your first spiritual quest. Developmentally, so from age 0 to 11 or 12, and when puberty starts and everybody says, oh, your teenage years, and they lose their minds and they aren't making good decisions and some get depressed. I mean, know that when you become a teenager, everything in your body changes, the chemically changes, the emotional changes, and spiritually you enter the most significant time of your soul's journey is your teenage years, because you leave the protective custody of the spiritual protection provided by others, and it's like you're going out into the wilderness spiritually. Literally, this is true. I'm not just like, so you start the spiritual quest. And if you picture yourself like in the tribe being sent out alone into the forest until you learn the lessons of life, this is what is happening for you in these years where you don't have answers. You're going to ask the questions, who am I? Who is God? This is what I thought about God my whole life, and now I don't know what I believe. Why am I here? What's the purpose of anything? These are normal questions for you to ask it's can be very scary when you ask those questions and you don't have answers. But that's also part of your journey. So I guess I just want to put that out there as a permission to say, yes, these years are tough and there's reasons for it. And it's easy to lose hope and lack meaning and wish you were something that you weren't. And yes, all those are true, and you'll make it. So there's often hope in knowing what the process is so you can accept it as part of the process. So expect the void, expect the darkness, find support where you can, find people like myself and Grant who have been there that can at least say, yeah, you're okay, you know, and go inside and be in touch with that part of you that's okay, because it's there. There might be a lot of crap on top of it. The more you can go inside in that silence, let that voice of your okayness speak out, because it's there. And if you can't find it, you got people in your life, hopefully, that will assure you that it's there. And that's why I'm just so, I see, yeah. Call me, email me. I will help you discover, or at least hold on long enough until you can. And that's my mission, and that's my journey that I went through and had to learn in order to be in this moment with all of you right now. So yeah, boy, where'd that come from? I don't know, but that's okay. Back to you, Grant.
Beautiful and moving. Yeah. That is exactly what I'm talking about. And you just express exactly what it means to show up as what's true for your being. And it's just beautiful. What a great demonstration. I feel like I need.
Well, it's taken me
Right.
60 years to really be able to look back on my life, because I did not have that meaning. I didn't see purpose. I did not have hope. And if we talk about having a soul blueprint, which is before you get here, you decide what kind of experiences you want in order. Here we go. Soul value. What is my soul here to learn? Mine was, I got to go through a whole lot of crap emotionally, a whole lot of experiences of not finding the ability to love myself and experience the ultimate separation from source to the point of nearly taking my own life. I mean, truly, so I understand the lack of meaning, the I don't want to be here, the suicidalness, and I've reached the edge, and so many people were there to be my lifeline long enough to have experienced the love coming back, the healing, and a lot of work at letting go of all the beliefs, and just lots of stuff. But I can now speak with a certainty of it's in there, and we can survive this. This is a tough world. It is possible. We chose to be here. We didn't choose necessarily all of the crap that we have coming at us, but we did choose the people to be in our path to help us get through it. And I only know that because that was my path, and I am beyond humbled and honored, and it brings tears to my. I never believed I would be sitting here today and being able to offer that kind of love and support. And it's just like, seriously intense for me too. So but it's in that sole purpose, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
Even knowing that that kind of talk and that purpose exists is a first step. Took me a really long time to find it, which is why you, Grant, I mean, to even be seeing you asking these questions and living this out so early in your life, and the kids on this call, it's that's what separates all of you from most on the planet right now, is that ability to self-reflect and, you know, just be open to this life that you've chosen to be here, and you have the power and the resources to live this out. All right, boy. Okay. I gotta let that. Woo. Hi.
Hi.
Let's. Where would you like to go from here? How are you feeling right now? I'm looking at you. I'm trying to read you too. Yeah.
I feel very nice actually listening to you talk about the whole last like 10 minutes. There was a point especially where I felt just it evoked a sort of heart opening in me to just watch you be so human and raw, and also speaking honestly. It just really, that's like what this is about, is showing up as our whole being. And that was just a wonderful display. Anything I could say tonight would not be able to compare to your genuine display of what I'm pointing to. That was far more powerful than what any words I could talk about it, because it was the real thing.
And it's a good thing we don't need to compare. So yeah, but I hear you. Thank you. And I isn't it amazing just seeing how we are here for each other? I mean, again, what I get back from everyone on these calls and from you, and that's how this whole thing is evolving. I mean, just this interaction and your feedback touches me in a way that makes that authenticity okay to share, and just not being self-conscious. And yeah, so here we are.
Mm-hmm.
And whether you're listening to this or not, and what I want to, you know, as this recording goes out, the offering to the teens as well, if what we're talking about tonight evokes stuff in you, or if you have questions you want to ask me or you want to ask Grant, you know, hopefully there's a email that you might be able to get in touch with us through. If not, you can always go, this is not a promotion, but this is, I thought about this earlier, even go into my website and filling out a contact form with questions or something. You know, my desire one day is to even have a Ask Kaylaa section on my website, and to have some interactive, you know, just give and take with kids and adults, and that would be so sweet. So if that's evoking anything in you tonight, that, you know, you want to get in touch with either one of us, you know, please do. Yeah, this is big stuff. So thank you. But I don't want to miss out on you walking us through how to actually do this for ourselves and explore that. So how about if we
let me just
pretend like we got 100 people on this call right now, because we're going to have more than that, because we are manifesting awesomeness.
Whew. Well, this is not, you know, the only way to go about asking these questions. The point of whatever I say next in this guided meditation that I'm genuinely just winging, the point is to bring you into listening to that deeper aspect that is clearly coming forth as we communicate back and forth. You can kind of get a sense for it. You have to feel and listen from somewhere deeper to really get a sense for what I'm talking about here, but it's available to anybody who's genuinely just sits and listens to their being. So I'm just going to start with, I recommend a couple minutes of just regular meditation to kind of center, and then kind of just get into the questions that you might want to ask yourself.
Okay, so let's actually do this in real time, and take the time for the meditation. So if somebody's listening, they can engage in this process in real time and just take as much time as you need. And I'm going to just like open this up to you, Grant, as
Okay.
this is the perfect moment of you showing up. And here you are, world, in your awesomeness and leadership as this starseed. You've got this, and you know exactly, you saying you're winging it, and it's divine, perfect winging. So this is sweet.
There's going to be a little bit of silence in between questions. So, I'll try to feel out for when to cut it off, because obviously, you can remain with the question after the meditation as well. So yeah, I invite you to close your eyes and sit generally somewhere that's not too comfortable, but is relaxing. You don't want to be distracted by bodily sensations. So get comfortable, but not to the point where you might get a little hazy. If you close your eyes, you don't want to be dull. You want to have a little bit of alertness. And just close your eyes, maybe put a hand on your heart. Feel that hand there. What is the sensation of hand on heart? Taking deep breaths if you feel compelled or called to. You can shift focus to the breath coming in and out of your nose, or to the air filling in and out of your belly. And it's okay if you have thoughts running in your mind. That's not a problem. Trying to stop the mind is just the mind's activity, coincidentally. The one trying to stop the mind is the mind. So just let it be. Let the whole moment be. Let yourself be. Let the sensations in your body be. The sounds around you be. Thoughts of, am I doing this right or wrong? Just let that be. This beingness is a form of stillness. As we sink deeper and deeper into just being, which is an openness, an allowance, a letting go, a sort of expansive quality to our attention might open up, and a feeling of wholeness might encompass the moment as well. I invite you to shift your attention to your lower gut, a few inches below the navel. And whatever that means for you, you might just want to focus on the sensation of the skin or the tummy in that area, or touch into whatever sense of energetic system you have there. And you might want to similarly become aware of the weight of the legs and the bottom of your spine as it sits and supports you in the chair or wherever you may be. The feet. Notice the perceptual quality of resting your attention and awareness in the lower body. You might notice that this softens the mind racing, if that's something that's occurring for you as you attempt to sit. Anywhere, now scan your body and your whole field of awareness. Anywhere where there's tension, just notice it and allow it to be there. Maybe feel into it, but don't try to change it. Just allow it to be what it is and interact with it in the sense of meeting it. And you'll notice that this will likely loosen that tension. And now you might notice that the gut, the heart, and the mind, and the whole body and being are open and expansive and accessible points of awareness from which to perceive your own being, life, really not separate, one thing. From this place, this deeper listening, which includes the body as a sensory instrument, you might notice a sort of listening quality in the gut and in the heart centers that provide feedback, perhaps about what I'm saying. How does it land in you? These are perceptual instruments for guidance. You can use them and rely on them to provide a sort of guiding quality. It's a form of listening. And now I invite you to enter into the inquiry and to set the intention to be open to whatever shows up and to ideas or answers that are outside of what you might have expected. And to also open up to allowing yourself to not know the answer to any of the following questions. Just to set the intention to be honest and to listen to what's true for you. From here, I'm going to ask a series of different questions, and you just listen to what it evokes for you. You don't have to have an answer now. Notice what the mind says. It may or may not be wrong. Usually the mind jumps the gun. So just allow all the answers from the heart and the gut and the head and the body at large to land in your awareness, and you can feel out and discern what feels true for you from that. The first question is, what am I? What is it to be? I'll give each question a little period of time for you to feel out what it evokes. And following the recording, I recommend coming back to whatever questions felt relevant and giving them the necessary time to really feel them out in full. So I'll just list a series of questions. And the next question will be, what is the experience of this moment when I don't refer to any thoughts to give me the answer? Similar question as the prior one, but you'll notice that asking the same question with different words can sometimes give it a subtle flavor change. And you'll notice if you're listening in this energetic body systems instrument for sensing, that each way of asking even the same question will evoke a slightly different quality. So what is the experience of this moment is another way of asking, what is it to be? Which is another form of, what am I? Another powerful question that we can ask in meditation is, what is present now that might want my attention? This is really useful for letting contracted energy in our system to be met and released, not necessarily to get rid of it, but to allow it to be met in a sense of, when we allow what is, we're no longer divided against it. And in doing that, it transmutes or alchemizes it into a more whole or unified frequency. It returns back to source in a sense, if we deeply allow what is to be what it is. And this is relevant for allowing ourselves to be the way we are. Now we can shift our focus towards questions relating to soul values. You might ask yourself, what is love? Throughout this process, just pay attention to which inquiries feel alive for you. That aliveness is a really good indicator of which direction to take in all of our life. When something's alive, it means it resonates on a deeper level with what's true or important for us as a being. Perhaps when you're looking at which colleges to apply to, you might hold each one separately in this beingness space and get a feeling for what the energetic signature or flavor is for you, how it resonates or lands in your being. So you just say, for example, U of M, and you let that land in you. And you just listen. It might not come as an answer in the form of words. It might be a feeling or an impression or a visual. And then you might say Michigan State. And this is a really powerful tool for becoming very clear on how our system responds to different phenomena or choices. And you can do the same thing thinking about friendships or relationships. You know, what comes up in my being when I'm contemplating my best friend or my mom or my dad. You might even ask, what comes up when I bring into awareness myself and being with all of that material. And if you really just sense it out, there's no right way to do it. Just sense and be with these questions. And the being within itself is is what the inquiry is, and the insights come out of the being with, the meeting, the material that arises. Another soul value question might be, what does it mean to be courageous or to be compassionate? What is compassion? What is truth? A really powerful question might be, what do I know that I haven't been willing to let myself see? Where am I not being honest with myself? What could be truer in the way that I show up in my life? True to myself, true to the agreed commitment that I have with my friends and relationships. How could I show up more truthfully in those? What does it mean to embody love in what I do, in my job, in my school, in my relationships? And after you've gotten a sense for this practice here, the fundamental question that we might come upon is, what is my most important thing? What is my life in service to? What am I called? What is called forth in me by life? What is life calling forth in me? What is my deeper being or knowing calling forth in me? My heart calling forth in me? My hope for you is that sitting with these questions in contemplation can evoke clarity and allow you to orient in a very strong way that in itself provides clarity and helps you to navigate as you go through life. We can't ever predict what's going to happen next in a fundamental sense. We can't know, but we can be clear about how we want to respond to life. When something happens that's difficult or trying, or maybe new, and we don't know how to respond, the question of how am I going to respond? Where am I going to respond from? What place in my being am I going to show up as? And when you're ready, you can open your eyes. And at any time, return to these questions in yourself. The answers, all of these questions are living inquiries. They're not designed to be one-off answers that you stay with forever. Part of being attuned to what's true for us is knowing when something's no longer true for us, that was formerly true. And if you stick with this sensory instrument of our being for truth, you will be essentially in commitment and expressing as the authenticity of your being. You will be showing up as who you are, what you are, in all that you do. All right, thank you. That's all.
Wow. That's really, really powerful stuff. And what a journey for any kind of discernment. I mean, it's really letting our body, I mean, there's a consciousness in every cell of our body that has these answers that our mind just like is programmed to answer a way that isn't necessarily in coherence with our body. Yeah,
Mhm.
it's body's not going to lie or fool us is probably a better way. That was great. So this is that somatic
I
learning that
tossed it
you've
in there.
been. Well, yeah. Well, that along with then the question, it reminds me a little bit of the muscle testing kinesiology kind of
Mhm.
process as well of finding the answers within us. That's,
Mhm.
that's excellent, and I love the fact that it even in very practical questions like college choice. I mean, it's what resonates most. That thank you. That was
Mhm.
really quite a gifted process, and it's couple that, well, alone it's awesome. Couple that with automatic writing. Do you do any of that yourself? Have you ever played
I've
around?
done it. I've done it. I don't necessarily do it so much anymore. I can find it kind of activating for my mind,
Oh,
but
okay.
but
Well,
it's definitely a tool that I know works for most people,
yeah.
many.
Well, I've been teaching it lately, so I've got another course coming up this week. And well, the first time I did it, the whole it's not just even a spiritual tool, nor is this. This is what we're talking about going in meditation for that inner knowing.
Mhm.
It's not limited to spiritual populations of people. I mean, even psychology. I mean, you going into this field knowing these tools to guide people. And again, even automatic writing, people have some woo woo, like, oh my gosh, what is that? The spirit's going to take over my arm, and like, so, which is not it at all. But
Yeah.
it's that process. So I'm imagining going back with this recording, even coupling that meditative state with a pen in my hand and getting almost like a double truth answer if we write the answers out, committing to not stopping, and whatever thought and word is next in our head is what automatic writing is, and letting that spirit speak through without censoring our thoughts.
Mhm. That
What is love to me? And even if it seems like the goofiest, silliest answer, writing for perhaps even a straight 2 minutes on each of those questions and trusting that the guidance coming
Mhm.
through will have little snippets of wisdom for us that will bypass the brain. Wow.
Yeah, that
Questions
actually.
themselves. Yeah.
So once you've written, you can actually then also go back and while you're reading it, read from that place of beingness and watch how what you've written, the different parts land in your sensory organs, we'll call the heart and the gut. And that can provide even more information about what you've automatically written, and you might find some parts resonate a lot more or some parts don't resonate at all. It's a subconscious dump when we're doing that automatic writing as well. And so sometimes
we
Yeah.
don't even know what it is that's coming out, and then to read it. So as you're talking right now, it's like I'm picturing this the flow, the yin yang of it all.
Yeah,
The
totally.
flow out has a huge purpose, but then stopping to allow it back in is like a whole different vibe.
Hmm.
It's kind of
So
a
a cool
very
little
neat.
feedback loop there. Yeah.
Yeah. Feedback from ourselves. I mean, yeah, if you can't hear it from yourself. And the key in all of that is if the answers to any of these questions are anything but supportive, we know that our mind has kicked in and our ego has taken over wanting to come up with the right answers, because who our inner guidance is, that higher self is love and has nothing but our best interests at
Hmm.
heart. So we can trust it when it may not even sound like our voice,
Right.
yeah.
I guess one more thing I might add, because this is such a powerful, I mean, really, at the end of the day, this is, I think, probably the most important thing, as I've mentioned multiple times. It's funny that it's such a nice little tagline there. What the most important thing
Really.
is thing, but also the listening aspect. This practice itself is probably the listening part is almost, if not equally as profound as getting these answers. Something you can practice doing is writing from being, from this space. You'll notice certain, you'll write, if you write from that space, it's kind of like sensing what is true to write next, or speaking from that place is a very powerful practice. Speaking from presence, we could call it. And you'll notice as you speak, if you're being bodily or sensorily aware, you'll notice when something isn't true that you say. If you say something that doesn't feel true, you'll feel it. It'll contract something in your being. And listening from presence is also equally as powerful, to listen and to receive another being's expression from a place deeper than the mind, to listen from your deepest being. All of that is a sensory instrument for reality and the divine, you could say. So speaking and listening from presence are very powerful practices and pretty accelerative for development. If you're always speaking what's true or acting in accordance with what feels true, you'll pretty quickly notice where you're not in alignment.
Yes. Yeah, that's right on. And again, it calls us to really be honest with ourselves. And when we notice it, then what do? A friend of mine says we are the chooser of our choices, which is like the empowered statement of the lifetime. We are chooser of our choices. So when I notice that contraction, I'm choosing to ignore it, knowing full well that it's like, you might want to choose different. And I'm free to choose or not. And those are the perfect examples of, you know what, I knew going down this street just didn't feel right, but it was the fastest way home. And there's the accident and here's the traffic. I mean, that's a silly, relatively inconsequential way.
So true.
I'm going out with my friends and this just doesn't feel right, but everybody else is doing it, so I'm gonna do it anyway, and some big consequence results from that. And again, it's going back to recognizing the most important lesson isn't what becomes of it, is I recognize that moment of contraction. Why did I choose that? What was my motivation for choosing that? And then learning from that. And simple, no judgment. It's like, wow, that time I chose not to listen. I wonder what I'll do next time. And maybe I'll do the same time for 10 more times.
Yeah.
So we make another choice. And that is, gosh, that's growing into adulthood spiritually and physically.
Yep.
Wow,
Totally.
Mr. Adulthood, Starseed Elder of my group. This has been amazing.
I'm glad. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, this is all so profound. Any last
One thing.
words for all those listening? And I got the feeling, well, you'll be back in December, just perhaps not at this deepest level, but a definitely fun.
A little lighter. Yeah.
A little lighter, and yeah, let's just stick to some spiritual development as opposed to profound life changes here.
Something super small, not like very like grand closing statement. When I said thank you for having me, it reminded me something I sometimes practice when I work in retail, and when the customers come in, they ask how I'm doing, and then I remember to say, to feel into that response, to feel how I'm feeling as I say, I'm having a nice day or not a good day, or however it might be. And when I ask them, to ask genuinely, how are you doing? We're so conditioned to ask, how are you doing today? Or to say thank you or have a nice day without actually feeling, have a nice day. The intention behind the words, have a nice day, or thank you for having me. To feel that in to say it from the body rather than the mind is interesting. And I sometimes like to be attentive to that.
Yeah, all of this. It's like the brain can be so tired at the end of the day by living in this present awareness of making these choices time after time. But just to piggyback on that, because it crossed my mind earlier and I just didn't say it, as when you're interacting with someone who's living from that present moment, and you're saying, be in this body state for listening, for speaking, for writing. I mean, literally writing an essay for school. You're going to save a lot of time by taking the 5 or 10 minutes beforehand to get into a meditative state and then produce the answers that you want to. It just, I don't know, it's like magically there's an ease and flow to it, as opposed to 4 hours of gut wrenching. What do I say next? What are the exact words? That's just a little helpful school tip. But that presence, when someone is actually listening to you and speaking, as you're even saying in the little catchphrases of society today, it's the most profound gift we can give to each other.
I love that you said that.
If you want to do nothing else, if you don't even feel capable of, who am I at 8 years old, at 15 years old, at 35 years old, I have nothing to give, who am I? Doing that will have profound changes on somebody's life, and likely you're not going to know that, but then again, you might one day hear back.
Yeah.
Cool. Wow, you and I are going on the road, bud. Thank you so much. And
of course.
On behalf of all of the growing star seeds in this universe, you're living it and you're sharing it, and so appreciative.
Thank you.
So yeah. Okay, we will. There's no such thing as goodbye. It's all one long journey, So, okay, thank you again. And we continue.
Thank you.